Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 668. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. Good to see you, James.
Good to see you too. We're Zachless again.
We are Zachless.
He's celebrating his... what?
I think Valentine's weekend.
Oh, is it just Valentine's weekend?
Right, because his anniversary is in the summer.
That's true. I was going to say anniversary, and I was like, I don't remember them getting married in February. so then I was like, oh, that was wrong.
I do believe they are celebrating their 10-year anniversary this year, though.
Oh, really? 10 years.
Yeah. Well,
That's
Meg and I
crazy.
just celebrated 15 years like a week ago.
Sure.
So 10 years, that's nothing. Pish posh. How cute of them. Only how quaint. Just a decade.
Sure. I have 0 years, so I have nothing to say about that, basically.
You're still the breeder, so it's fine with me.
Only people who bring life into this world you respect.
Yeah, you have value.
Even if it wasn't planned.
Yeah, hey, you know what? You do you, man.
Sure. All right.
It's
Fair
all
enough.
part of the greater plan. You know, maybe you didn't plan, but someone made that plan.
Sure. I'm glad I have your respect by having a child. Something anybody can do.
Well, no, not anyone can do that.
Oh, most people.
Yeah, most, but not
Most
anyone.
people, yeah. So I guess we should play
Bring
this.
Zach back. Bring
Bring
Zach back. Bring Zach back. Bring Zach back.
We're going to miss him.
We are a Zachless dress.
Especially with the movie we're going to talk about today. I feel like this is the kind of movie that I have no clue what Zach would think about it.
I think I know where he would land on this movie just
Okay.
because of its similarities to another movie that I know he hates.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get into it then. Maybe
Okay.
I'll let you review it for as if you were Zach. Like you tell
Sure.
us
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
Zach
I'll
thinks
do
of
my
the
best
movie.
Zach review.
Sure.
Okay.
Perfect. So yeah, we're going to talk the new Apple TV Plus exclusive film, The Gorge. And we're also going to run down our top 10, quote, trash, unquote, sci-fi movies, which is a name we landed on after not a ton of debate, but some debate.
There was some
would
back
say.
and forth about what exactly this list is, and I'm curious to see how you made your list.
For sure. Yeah, so stick around if you're curious to know what a trash sci-fi movie means to Kyle and what it means to me, because it might mean something completely separate.
We might have very different interpretations, but either way, there will be 2 top 10 lists about sci-fi movies at the end of this episode.
Right. Before we jump into all of that, we need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out there. Search Cinereelists, REEL with an S on the end. Find us, subscribe, and watch while you listen. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Leave us an Apple Podcast review, 5 stars only. We'd appreciate that. Or send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. Again, REEL with an S on the end. Links to do any of those kinds of things are in the show notes of this episode. So click away. You ready to
Ooh.
talk The Gorge?
Can we give one more plug?
Sure.
We're doing an Oscar ballots too, aren't we? That Oscar game?
We are, but nobody has given me a link yet.
Oh, okay. So can't plug that. And that's like 2 weeks away, isn't it?
It's 2 weeks away.
Okay.
Maybe next week we should also do Oscar picks.
That might be good. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, every year we'll just briefly, every year we do an Oscar pool. We're going to do it again this year, but I need the link before I will send you guys to it. But just keep your mind open to an Oscar pool that we're going to plug next episode. All right. That's all we're asking you guys. Keep your mind open to it.
Start your ballot in your head.
Right. Exactly.
And then in a week or so,
we'll
fill
have a
out your
link.
ballot. Yes.
Yeah. We'll drop the link in Discord and everywhere else as well. So, all right. Now you're ready to jump into the gorge.
I think I'm ready to gorge myself on the gorge.
Okay. All right. Sure. We'll talk the Gorge in full right after this clip.
Colonel, give us the room, please. "4 years retired, yet 2 salutes.
Shows respect.
Have a seat. Do you know who I am?
No.
Well, if you were to guess.
Judging by your age, appearance, and how Marine Colonel just followed your order without a yip, I'd guess you're some kind of high-level spook.
Your father and grandfather served.
Yes.
As an elite sniper, you have 113 confirmed kills and an additional 81 probable kills. Are those numbers accurate?
No.
Are the actual numbers fewer or greater?
Greater.
That was The Gorge, a 2025 American science fiction horror action film directed by Scott Derrickson and starring Miles Teller, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Sigourney Weaver, amongst a small handful of others.
I would say amongst other.
Yeah.
There's
sure.
one more person in this movie, more or less.
The official IMDb plot synopsis for The Gorge is: 2 highly trained operatives become close after being sent to protect opposite sides of a mysterious gorge. When an evil emerges, they must work together to survive what lies within.
We didn't discuss this. Are we going to do spoilers?
I mean, my opinion is you can't really spoil this movie.
I'm not saying that
I
it's an interesting spoil, but I think you can spoil the movie. Like, you don't know what's in the gorge when the movie starts, and that's part of the mystery.
Okay, what do you need to talk about the ending?
I don't need to talk about the ending, but I think I want to talk about maybe the mystery a little bit.
And you think the mystery is a spoiler?
Yes, it's a mystery. It's definitely a spoiler.
Maybe we just have different opinions on what's mysterious.
Did you know what was in the gorge before you saw this movie?
No. So in that way, it's a mystery.
Exactly.
In the way in which they didn't make me care at all what was in the gorge, it's not a mystery at all.
I'm not saying that it's a good mystery or an interesting mystery, but I do think it is a mystery, and I don't want to just give it away.
Like, it would be a spoiler saying what it is, but knowing what it is will not spoil the movie for you because it will not matter what's in the gorge.
I still think we should, for people who really want to find out what's in the gorge.
Right, but do we need to discuss what's in the gorge?
I don't think we need to discuss it like in detail,
it's
but I may want to. I don't know. Okay, maybe if we need to do a spoiler moment, we'll do a spoiler moment. How does that sound?
Sure.
Okay.
So spoiler free, unless
Yes.
we say it's not, for a moment it's not going to be. Do you want to go first, or you don't want me to? I'm kind of showing what I think of it, I guess. But
I'll go first.
Okay.
And then we can bounce off a little repartee here.
Okay.
So yeah, I sent this movie to you, and you were like, "Let's do it." Looks like a great trashy sci-fi movie.
Yep.
And this movie has a lot of I don't say prestige going for it, but it has like big names. Like you mentioned, Miles Teller, Anya Taylor-Joy, Sigourney Weaver, Scott Derrickson. He's directed Doctor Strange, some horror movies also.
He's
right?
the Black Phone guy.
Black Phone, right? Which I liked that movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie has a lot going for it, and it doesn't quite deliver. But I also wasn't mad at this movie. There is parts of it I liked. It's a movie where if you if you really think about it, it's very easy to pick this movie apart.
Sure.
There's a lot of, I mean, their setup is, I'll give a little bit more setup. We don't know, somewhere in the world, Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, he's American, she is Lithuanian. Yes, yeah.
But she's guarding the Russian side of the gorge.
Right. There's this massive gorge, and there's these 2 watchtowers, these 2 World War II era watchtowers. And they are each guarding either side of this gorge from something that's down in the gorge. Right. And they're separately told, like, you're here for a year. You don't worry about that side. You just worry about what's coming up, what's down there. And then a year later, we'll pull you out and you can just go on with your life. And of course, once Miles Teller sees that across the gorge is Anya Taylor-Joy, he's like, well, I'm interested in this person.
Mm-hmm.
So there's and then they kind of start a cute relationship from across the gorge and eventually figure out ways to spend time together before the sci-fi part of it kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of questions of, like, they're the first people to try to talk to communicate with each other. At one point she pulls out this thing that would have been really helpful an hour earlier in the movie, which I was like, oh, that's convenient. You had that the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of this movie you can pick apart. The mystery, like we said, is not an interesting mystery. There is a mystery. Their job seems, I'm not sure how not good they are at the job, but like the defenses they have seem to be counterproductive to actually defending the gorge, if that makes sense. Because you get some sci-fi action moments and you're like, well, that seemed to do more damage than it was worth in that moment right there. That being said, all of the silliness aside, I still enjoyed watching this movie. And it's because I liked seeing Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy on screen together. They have chemistry. When they're together, you're like, okay, this is a believable, I guess they're a couple in a sense. They're kind of 2 strangers who found each other. And when we go into the gorge, although it was like Alex Garland's Light, and I think Annihilation is a movie we could really draw a parallel to, I liked the look of the gorge. It kind of had this, like, funky otherworld look to it. Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross are doing the music. That was kind of Annihilation-esque. This whole movie felt like, let's kind of make our own version of Annihilation, but, let's make it more of a creature feature and less of a, like, philosophical meditation on existence.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the creatures were kind of cool. There's a, there was a centipede, which Megan found horrifying. So Megan and I watched this movie together. First off, we made a decision that we were like drinking margaritas while we were watching it. Every time someone said the gorge, we would take a sip of margarita. And man, that first like 15-minute info dump when Miles Teller's talking to the other guy and they're saying the gorge every other word. We're like, oh boy, this is so.
You were taking a lot of sips.
Yeah, we drank a fair amount of margarita in the first 15 minutes of the movie, and then it's kind of dialogueless for a while. And then they go into the gorge. Spoiler alert, because you got to go into the gorge. And at that point, Megan's like, I'm no longer enjoying this movie. She's like, I like it was Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy like sending messages to each other from across the gorge. Once we're down with centipede monsters, she was like, no more for me. But I like the centipede monster. I liked the tree that he fell into, if that makes sense.
The sticky tree?
The sticky tree. I thought that was super clever, and I've never seen that before. And yeah, I liked the look of the gorge, even if it was cribbing from lots of other sci-fi that I've seen before. It wasn't unique, but I think it did a nice job of kind of, I don't know, mirroring other sci-fi that I've seen before in a way that felt still different. It wasn't like just copying altogether.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there is a mystery about what the gorge is. When you talk about this, the mystery's stupid. It's not a good mystery. It doesn't pay off. And that's, I don't know, that's fine for me. With all those things, I still was just enjoying this movie, even though I knew deep down this movie's kind of stupid.
Okay.
it didn't make me feel stupid watching it.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. You're done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Perfect. I don't necessarily disagree with what you said. I'm not mad at this movie. This is just very much like a very right down the middle sci-fi movie for me. Like there was very little in this that felt new to me.
Yeah.
Felt like a lot of pieces of a lot of other much better things, I would say. I definitely got Alex Garland vibes for sure. Like somebody trying to kind of do a little bit of an impression of him, especially down in the gorge itself.
Right.
Also got very heavy Resident Evil vibes. Like pretty much all the monster designs felt ripped right out of that video game and movie series.
Interesting.
Yeah, the kind of like demons with different mutant animal type things with like people's heads kind of popping out of them and stuff.
Yes.
Is just absolutely a Resident Evil trope to me. That's like the first place I saw that. Then the soldiers with the, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but like describing the bad guys. Is this a spoiler?
They kind of look like mutant Groots is the best way to put it.
Yeah. I didn't watch the trailer, so I don't know how much they show in that. But yeah, a lot of the soldiers look like hybrid trees.
Right.
And I just constantly thought of Groot and the Ents from Lord of the Rings.
Right. Yep.
And I was just like, and the mushroom guys from The Last of Us, another video game that was a TV show.
Cordyceps or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, like all that stuff was just like stewing in my brain as I was watching it. And then she fights one guy who seems to have it more together in his brain. There's like one baddie guy that looked like an Ent.
That seems to have like agency.
Right.
Yes.
And a snake came out of that guy's chest, and I laughed out loud.
That Megan hated that. When that snake came out of that guy's chest, she was not happy.
It was very stupid, I would say.
I don't know. Jumanji, the new Jumanji movie does that with Bobby Cavallani, whatever his name is. He got snakes coming out of him.
I mean, it was very stupid, I would say. I think the beginning part when they're kind of like isolated and it's the whole like love story, I guess, the setup of why these two characters would bother to kind of fight it out for each other. I wasn't necessarily on board, but I didn't feel like that felt derivative of anything. And then
that felt kind of unique.
It felt like a spin. You know what I mean? On like, this is a hard sci-fi movie, but you're going to spend a solid hour with these two people, like not barely shooting a single thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's some action scenes, but it's really more about their relationship. There's music, like pop music drops going on during those moments too.
And they pretty much have it all under control.
Yes.
And then they get down to the gorge, and it just kind of fell apart for me.
Yeah.
Not fell apart, because I do think it's on paper, I don't think there's that many holes, like from a logic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they spent so much time on the romance that like once they got down into the gorge, not only did it remind me of a bunch of other things that are much better, but then they just kind of bled why these things are down there. You know what I mean? There's like a 10-minute scene where it's just like the two characters making assumptions about things, and then they get delivered the answer to all their questions.
Right. They find the old, thankfully someone recorded a message before they left. And
Right.
let's
and
just
then it's
pop
like,
this on.
this is why everything exists. And it's like, so they didn't solve the mystery. Somebody handed it to them on a silver platter.
I'm impressed Miles Teller knows how to use an 8mm projector.
Sure.
Or Miles Teller character, and
Is that a commentary on his intelligence?
No, I mean, like, his character, Miles Teller is in his late 30s.
Sure.
So he was born in 1990. I never learned how to, we had 8mm projectors in school, but I never learned how to use them. They were just sort of there. The teacher knew how to do it. I just don't think it's a common skill anymore.
You're saying if I gave you a reel and an 8mm projector, you couldn't figure out how to get it to work?
I could maybe figure it out, but he just was like, bam, 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 bam. We're ready to go. He knew the shutter and all the gates and everything. I could figure it out.
Maybe he was a projectionist before he worked for the military.
He was in the AV club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't hate watch the movie. I didn't even dislike the movie. I just felt like they had a decent thing going, and then it just kind of turned into every other, mid-level, unremarkable sci-fi movie I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Especially in modern times. Plus, the action, I just don't care about CG, real people fighting CG monsters. I just don't. Yeah. I couldn't care less about it. Like the scene where they're on the walkway, the catwalk.
Yeah.
And it's all lit golden. Those things reminded me of other movies too. But at least it felt real. I think some of that was CG and some of that was practical, I'm pretty sure. Right. The mix there, I think, was perfect, and I liked that scene. But when they're fighting pretty much anything else, I was just kind of okay. There was nothing. It didn't feel like there was gravity in the room. You know what I mean?
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What didn't work for me was towards the end, they were fighting drones with Gatling guns,
mm-hmm.
which were just these CG things buzzing around, which I felt nothing. The only part I liked was at one point they shoot one down and then it kind of crashes behind Anya Taylor-Joy. Mm-hmm. And that seems like at that point, they actually crashed something real into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Because that hit the ground, blew up and flew into a tree. I'm like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
But all the flying through the trees and buzz around, well, this is just watching How to Train Your Dragon with Gatling guns. So it's not doing it for me.
This afternoon, I was watching Only the Lonely. Have you ever heard of that? I'm not familiar with
that, no.
It's an 80s movie starring John Candy and Ali Sheedy.
Okay.
John Candy's a mama's boy, and he's in his mid-30s, and he's trying to date Ali Sheedy. Anyway, whenever he goes to do something for himself, he has these visions about how his mother might die while he's gone.
Okay.
Type of thing. And in one of these visions, a car runs into a gas semi, and they do a real gas semi explosion in the middle of the street, which is insane for a low budget 80s comedy
yeah.
starring John Candy. And when I saw that, I was like, that looks so real, because it was,
mm-hmm.
compared to that CGI crap in the Gorge. I will take real any day over copious amounts of CG. I want CG where I cannot tell it's CG. Otherwise, don't do it. I think I'm at that point. Because I know they can do it.
Right.
And if they spend enough time on it and they think about what they're doing, from my understanding, you can make CGI shots that are undetectable. You just have to know your limits. You have to be creative with the filmmaking, the gear you have, that type of stuff. You have to think about it ahead of time. My understanding is a lot of these movies at this point that have $40 to $80 million budgets. They're these mid-tier sci-fi movies typically. They'll just shoot and shoot and shoot, and CG, hire a bunch of people from China or Taiwan or whatever and just pump it out, and who cares?
You're right.
That's the attitude. And I don't know. Maybe I've just seen enough of it that I'm over it.
I don't mind CG characters because I know that's the world we live in. Like, as much as I like seeing a guy in a rubber suit or makeup, I know that they're going to do CG characters. What bothers me is when things don't have weight to them. And it to me, it's like it's the elasticity, the rubber bandness, like nothing responds to physics, and that's when it bothers me. So like, if I'm getting a full CG character, doesn't bother me if it feels like it's real in the world. If it feels like it can interact with the world. Like,
is Nightmare Bear, is that CG or is that a real thing?
That's a blend.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's a good example of like somebody.
I was thinking Nightmare Bear also. Yep.
Somebody who like couldn't do exactly what they wanted to do, practical. And so they figured out how to make it look so real by planning it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Again, I'm not mad at this movie. It probably doesn't help that like I like Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, and I liked the first half. I liked where it was going, and then it just devolved from there. I'm with Megan. It was dumb once they got in the gorge. Plus, the name is really bad. Like
the gorge.
Gorge is like not a word I enjoy saying for some reason.
No, I mean, you call it the canyon, call it the chasm. Like, I don't like. I understand that a gorge is a geographical term, but people just don't use that term very often.
The valley.
Yeah, exactly. There's lots of things you could have called it. The gorge seems like a first draft name, and they just like, we'll stick with it.
Yeah, it's like what they put on the production gear to make sure nobody knows what movie you're making.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. If you had told me that AI had written this script, it was like the first movie where AI completely wrote the script from beginning to end, I would 100% believe you.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like a streamer movie in the sense of like, we got these stars, we got this romance, there's a sci-fi action angle to it. Like, it seems like it's something where they're hoping you'll be scrolling through and be like, yeah, I'll watch that. Why not? Like, I like those names.
I mean, I was wondering why Apple? Why not theater release for this? And then I saw it and I was like, okay.
Yeah. Now you know why.
They don't want it. They don't want it to be reviewed, I think, is why.
It's a movie where I think if they had thought out the actual gorge stuff better, I'm not saying this would have been another Annihilation, but I think it could have been like a theater release. Because you're right. It is unique at the beginning, the romance between these two people on either side of this chasm.
I feel like the CG made it unserious.
It's a lot of crawling creatures.
And like the way it's depicted too, because you can watch alien movies and like have some similar imagery and it feels tactile. I don't know.
When you watch an Alien or Aliens movie, you feel like there's some real danger to these creatures.
At least the old ones, anyway.
Yeah,
like 1, 2, and 3, I would say.
Yes, yeah. And in this one, especially like as much as I like the cool, they had these automatic Gatling guns, which were fun to look at. It felt like a video game. A lot of this movie felt like a video game.
Yeah.
Of like, defend this spot, keep spraying with guns until the bad guys go away. Crawl your way through this tunnel without touching the sides, Like it's and maybe it's because video games have become much more cinematic, but it's really hard to watch sometimes an action movie and not feel like, I'm watching a video game scene or like a mission right now.
Yeah, I agree. I totally felt like I was watching a Resident Evil video game.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the second they hit the bottom of the gorge, I was like, this is like when they another time I started laughing was when the tree guys came by on a horse.
Oh yes, on his tree horse. He had a tree horse.
He had a tree horse. I
Yeah.
was just like, what are we doing here? Then you have the soundtrack, which I knew Reznor and Ross were
Right.
doing the soundtrack. And it's not the first movie that I was like, why are they doing that movie type of thing? And I'm sure, you sign up for it. You probably haven't even seen it. It's good pedigree, director, good actors,
Right. You're kind of sold. Oh, here's the plot line of it. Yeah.
But also, and maybe I was just distracted, but the soundtrack did nothing for me. It felt very generic personally.
It felt like another Alex Garland light soundtrack.
Yeah,
I
that was the
liked it,
problem.
but it's so much of this movie reminded me of Annihilation.
Mhm.
Just its presentation, its look, its sound.
Yeah, I might need to listen to it on streaming just
Okay.
to see if the soundtrack is actually pretty decent versus my opinion of it right now, which is that it was uneventful at best. Let me see. They did no, all these. I guess Bird Box. They did the soundtrack for Bird Box.
Oh, I never saw Bird Box.
Yeah, Bird Box will remind you of this movie.
Okay,
Like,
another kind of
Some potential here and there, but for the most part, just like an amalgamation of better things.
Yep. Okay.
Bird Box. Oh wow, they did Patriots Day. I didn't know
With Marky Mark.
that. Mhm.
Interesting. Okay.
Anyway, oh wow, they did all right. Anyway,
What wasn't Gone Girl kind of like their breakout soundtrack?
no, I think Social Network.
Oh, sorry, Social Network. Wrong. Okay, wrong Fincher.
Social Network. Then they did Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which the soundtrack to that wasn't like it wasn't like a big deal or anything.
No,
but,
no. Also
Um,
Fincher. Yeah.
but yeah, I would say Social Network, Gone Girl's probably next as far as
Okay.
like interesting soundtrack. Then I really liked Waves is pretty awesome, which I don't think you've seen yet, but
I'm not. No.
Waves is probably their third best. Then maybe Soul, just because Soul is so different and interesting. It's like a
Oh, the
kid's
Pixar movie.
The Pixar movie, yeah. they did
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's like a little bit of like a jazzy electronic vibe to that one.
Yeah. I was shocked to hear Closer in a Pixar movie. I think a bunch of faceless souls would be singing that, but
Sure. Yep. You remember they did the soundtrack to Mank? Remember that movie Mank that we never talked about?
barely. Yes. Does anyone remember Mank? I mean, it's a Fincher movie, but has anyone talked about Mank since it came out?
No, this is a long Fincher movie, from what I remember. And then they did both Luca Guadagnino movies that came out this year, Challengers and Queer. They did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I knew they did Challengers. I didn't realize they did Queer also.
Yeah. I left a bunch off, but
Yeah, I'm sure. But okay.
anyway,
Now they can add The Gorge to their pedigree.
right. Anything else with the Gorge? It's hard to really talk about because it sounds like I'm complaining about it. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's I think for a
You're just gonna forget about it.
yes,
That's the thing. You're gonna forget about it.
like don't get Apple TV just to watch this movie,
Mm.
but I don't think you're gonna be super mad at it if you do. If you don't mind like some light sci-fi action and you like Anya Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller.
That's exactly what it is. Light.
Right.
Yep. Light sci-fi action.
If you don't like creepy crawlies, stay away from it though, because it does get creepy crawly once you're in the gorge.
Yeah, or just quit halfway and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I just think it's a love story about two lonely specialists.
Yep. All right. You ready to letterbox this? Letterbox.
I am
rank
ready.
this?
Yes.
Out of 5 stars, what are you gonna give the Gorge?
3 stars.
I give it 2.5. Which
Sounds
is
fair.
which is average to me. And that's
Yep.
right where this movie goes, in my opinion, right down the middle. All right. We also put together a list this week. The list is the top 10, quote, trash, unquote, sci-fi movies, which originally, when we talked about making the list, it was trashy. But The Gorge, which is, normally the movies related to the list we talk about, The Gorge is like not really a trashy movie. Like nobody gets naked. There's not even any cursing. All the fighting is very PG-13, I would say.
Yeah, I wouldn't call this movie trashy.
Right.
In that definition, no.
So trashy felt weird, but and trash is maybe a little too strong in relation to The Gorge, because I'm not sure it's trash. But it's also like just gonna occupy your time while you watch it, and that's about it.
Yes. Yeah.
You're not gonna remember it.
So what list did you make then?
I made like sci-fi movies that are similar
Okay.
to The Gorge, in that I think if you just aren't looking for anything special, but there might be a hook or a cast or something like that that makes it worth checking out once, with no expectation of it actually being like your favorite movie by the end of this, then this is the list of 10 sci-fi movies I came up with. Now, I will say, though, there's a couple on here that people might be mad at me about.
Right.
But we'll see. What did you do?
I kind of made the same list.
Okay.
These are sci-fi movies which aren't my favorite, probably won't be your favorite, but I think have at least something interesting to watch, or they're like, oh man, there's almost an idea here.
But and like the actual end execution wasn't awful, but it also wasn't anything anybody's ever going to write about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, are there some movies I hear people disagree with me? I'm sure, because, it's all subjective. But
right.
For me, these are like, yeah, it might be worth a poke, but don't expect great things either.
For sure. Definitely. Why don't I go first?
Please.
My number 10 is from 2003. It's Timeline. Have you ever seen Timeline?
No.
It's based on a Michael Crichton novel that I read before I saw the movie. It's historical science fiction adventure, and it's directed by Richard Donner.
Oh.
Of all people. The Goonies guy and Superman 2.
Superman.
Right. Timeline stars Paul Walker. So if you need to see a Paul Walker film you probably haven't seen because you missed the guy, you might want to pop in Timeline. Also starring in this movie, Gerard Butler, Billy Connolly, David Thewlis, I forget how you say it.
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Amongst others. And in this movie, these archaeologists find something. I forget what it is. What do they call those things when there's like an object that really has nothing
a
to do with the
MacGuffin?
plot? Yeah. They find some MacGuffin. And then for some reason, they discover a time machine related to this MacGuffin. And now they're like, we need to go back to the medieval times in order to do a thing that I'm not remembering what they have to do. And so it's half present day archaeologists finding a thing, weird sci-fi-ness, and then the other half, Bill and Ted style, is them going back in time. These like 5 impossibly young architects, I would say, because they're all like in their early 20s, and they're not architects, archaeologists. Like, what archaeologist do you know is in their early 20s? Anyway, so they go back in time and go on an adventure, even though they're modern people. And so all of that might sound super interesting. And it's really just exactly what it is. You know what I mean? There's just nothing to it beyond that, I would say. But it's fun to watch Paul Walker. act badly because he's not really a good actor.
He's not a great actor, no.
But it's fun to see him on screen again, and there's enough going on to like limp the movie along, I would say. I don't really remember how the plot resolves itself. It really doesn't matter. But yeah, if you're looking to, maybe the list should have been like top 10 sci-fi movies to waste a Saturday afternoon with.
I think that's a good name for this list. I think a lot of these movies are like interesting setup, but what you see is what you get.
Right. And it's
Like,
not even like interesting setup and they ruined it. It's just interesting setup and it never went anywhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or like it never got interesting.
They took the most obvious route out of that setup. Like the Gorge did. The Gorge took like the most easiest path it could take.
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah.
Almost an anticlimactic path, I would say.
It does end. You're like, oh, it's over.
Right. And ending with the drone stuff. Oh, that's probably a spoiler.
No, I mentioned the Gatling drones earlier.
Ending with the drone stuff is weird when you've like built up everything that's down in the gorge.
Yeah, exactly. It was. That's why it's a 3-star movie. It could have been fun, or it was fun. It could have been good, but it wasn't.
Oh, I should say another way I made this list is I went to Letterboxd. I told it sci-fi genre, and then I took only 2.5 movies.
Oh, nice.
So these are all movies that in the past I gave completely average ratings to. So my number 10, Timeline.
Nice. I will say I had a ton of fun making this list. I used to watch a lot of bad sci-fi movies when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of them made this list because I think they were just bad, but maybe for Patreon, I can go through some of the movies that I left off the list.
Okay.
That were kind of nostalgia watches. I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm sure these are terrible now, but when I was 8,
sure,
these are like VHS standards for me. However, one VHS standard did make my list at my number 10. This is 1996's Solo, starring Mario Van Peebles. Are you familiar with this movie at all?
No.
Have you seen this poster before? Like, do you recognize this VHS box?
Solo Mario.
So yeah, not a Star Wars story. It's hard. It's a harder movie to find.
Yes, I recognize the poster.
Okay. Yeah. So
it kind of looks like a Predator movie.
So this movie is like a mashup of Predator and Universal Soldier, but worse at both of those.
All right.
Mario Van Peebles plays this future soldier. He's a cyborg, whatever. And he is sent to eradicate a Latin American village for, I don't know, some warlord or something. And his programming goes awry, and he decides, I do not want to hurt these innocent people. I am instead going to protect these innocent people. And he decides to defend this village from whatever evil outside corporate rebel, forces are trying to overthrow it. And it very much becomes an Ewok movie where it's, the indigenous people band together with their simple logs and machines to stop the much more advanced, empire sense.
Sure.
Now, again, sounds interesting in the sense. I remember watching this movie a lot as a kid, like, in middle school, or I think it was a really cool movie. I watched a clip today of the like Ewok scene where they're like using logs to stop them. And it looks like A-Team action event, like A-Team action. I was like, wow, this does not look good at all. Like, it's a lot of people just spraying AK-47s into the forest, explosions with people jump off trampolines in front of you. And I was like, this is some cheap looking action. But
well, and like the only thing that makes it sci-fi is that he's an android, right?
Yeah. Well, and then another super soldier is then sent to fight him, who's played by William Sadler.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so there is a super soldier fight in it. So yeah, I guess this is more like bad action than it is sci-fi, but it has that sci-fi beds to it. But yeah, it definitely feels like this movie saw Predator, this movie saw Universal Soldier, this movie saw Star Wars, and it was like, we can do all that worse.
Sure. I'm seeing also that Academy Award winner and current Academy Award nominee Adrian Brody is in Solo.
Yes, I was watching a clip of it, and he's like an analyst in the general's command center. I was like, oh, he's just in the background.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, yep. I forgot. I mean, I didn't know who he was at the time, but I forgot that he was in that clip. Yeah,
that's pretty wild. All right, my number 9 is Hell Comes to Frogtown from 1988. Have you ever seen this?
I have not, but this is John Carpenter.
No, not John Carpenter. Roddy Piper stars in it, and Donald G. Jackson directs it. I don't know who that is.
Okay.
But yeah, professional wrestler Roddy Piper. Yep. He hasn't been in a lot of movies. You're thinking of They Live, which is John Carpenter.
Yes.
And Roddy Piper.
Yeah, also Roddy. Yep.
Hell Comes to Frogtown. How do you describe this? It's like if the live action Super Mario Brothers movie was mashed up with the original 70s Mad Max movies.
Okay.
And then you throw Roddy Piper just essentially being the same personality he is as a wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Just like over the top, bigger than life type of guy. This movie has like a cult classic reputation. And I saw it and I was just like, it's just a bunch of silliness. I mean, it's again, the sins of the Gorge are shared with this movie. It's just like a weird amalgamation of a bunch of much better things. Not that the live action Super Mario Brothers movie was better. They just shared creature designs between those movies, I would say. And They Live is a much better Roddy Piper movie.
Oh, yes.
And in that movie, there are elements of his wrestler personality, but they also like made a movie. Whereas Hell Comes to Frogtown, I think they wanted it to be kind of his breakout to become like a big action guy.
To make like an action, a star. Yeah.
It was just too stupid for that to happen. And to some people, stupid in an awesome way. To me, it was stupid in like a why am I watching this kind of way. Like what am I actually getting out of this at the end? And entertaining enough to pass to get a 2.5 for me, but that's where it ends.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
I've heard of that movie, but yeah, I thought it was John Carpenter. It must have been the Roddy connection.
Yeah,
the reason why. All right, my number 9 is another movie that is a straight to streamer sci-fi. This came out during pandemic. I think this has a lot of similar DNA to The Gorge. Not so much in that like it's about DNA, but in the the fact that it's like another sci-fi idea that seems to borrow from a lot of other ideas. Doesn't quite pull it off, but I still found something interesting about this, and this is 2021's Awake. This movie stars Gina Rodriguez and Ariana Greenblatt. In this movie, there's some sort of celestial event happens that causes everyone on Earth to be unable to sleep. They can't fall asleep anymore. Like they lay down for the night and they just are awake the whole time. And people, like society is very quickly going crazy because, as we know, when you lack sleep, you lose your mental capacities right away. The trick though is Ariana Greenblatt, who plays Gina Rodriguez's daughter, she is able to sleep. And everyone wants her, right? Because like, oh, this girl can sleep. Why can she sleep? Can we study her to figure out? So this is a movie about Gina Rodriguez trying to protect her daughter during an apocalypse. And it has everything. It feels like The Road at times where, like it really feels like within 2 days we've gone to full, cannibal blood gangs on the highway of no sleep. There's religious elements where people think that, God is causing this and that, we must sacrifice the child to God to be able to sleep again. And eventually the movie ends up in a military installation run by Jennifer Jason Leigh. Because again, these movies need to get like one big name in there. You get your Sigourney Weaver, you get your Jennifer Jason Leigh. And it actually, I think the ending of this movie is the best part because you have all these soldiers in this military installation who are just taking stimulants to stay awake. And it devolves into crazy action because someone mistakes a pine cone for a grenade. And then they all just start killing each other. And that's actually like the best part of the movie is just whenever everyone just is crazy with guns because they haven't slept in 4 days. And anything to them seems like a threat. So
wait, it's only been 4 days since they slept?
It's really like, well, I mean, how long how long can you clap for? How long can you go without sleep?
At least 3 days. 4 days and everybody goes crazy? I thought maybe they hadn't been sleeping for like months.
Oh, no. I want to say this movie takes place over a week. And that's what makes this movie ridiculous.
Well, then how do they know that this one girl can sleep and like there's not enough time to find the one person on the planet that can sleep?
I didn't say this is a good movie. There's a reason why it's on this list.
It sounds like somebody was like, you know what movie's good? Children of Men. Let's do that movie, but since we can't make it, women giving birth, let's make it sleeping.
Sleeping, yeah.
That's wild.
I will say, as I was making this list, Ariana Greenblatt did appear on a couple of these movies. Not in my top 10, but like she seems to really have the market cornered on like
interesting
mid-grade sci-fi.
Sure. Awake has a 22% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh yeah, this is not a recommendation as here's a good movie. This is a recommendation of like here's an interesting movie to watch. Like it's got, I like Gina Rodriguez. I like seeing Jennifer Jason Leigh in there, even though she's not doing a ton. And it's got a crazy ending, but you're also going to see people go the road within like 3 days of no sleep. So,
sure.
Yeah.
All right. My number 8 is from 2009, and it's called The Box. Have you ever seen The Box?
Is this the Cameron Diaz movie?
Yes.
Okay, I'm familiar with this premise. I've never seen it though.
Okay, it's a sci-fi thriller directed by Richard Kelly, who directed Donnie Darko, probably most famously, and he also directed I want to say State of Play, but that's not what it's called. The sci-fi movie that I love, Southland Tales.
Southland Tales, yeah.
He directed Southland Tales. Then he made The Box, and is this the last movie he made? It's very possible that this movie killed his career. This is the last movie he made.
All right.
2009. Wow. I can't believe, like the 1-2 punch, I think of Southland Tales and this. Essentially killed his career, I guess.
Okay.
That's what it looks like. Either that, maybe he decided he wasn't going to make movies. Who knows? Anyway, so yeah, directed by Richard Kelly, starring, as you mentioned, Cameron Diaz, James Marsden, Frank Langella, amongst others. And the premise is this couple living a decent life gets visited by a man in a black trench coat. And this man in a black trench coat puts a briefcase in front of them and says, "Here is $1 million." And he opens up the briefcase and he's like, "I'm going to give you this $1 million. But before I do, I need you to do one thing for me. You need to push this button that's inside this box. And when you do, somebody will die. You won't know who they are. It's going to happen. You don't know them. It's going to happen somewhere. You get the $1 million if you hit the button." So that's the premise. Interesting enough premise, as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, I feel like all these movies are impossible to spoil because everybody's going to see what's coming.
Yes.
Or they're not going to see what's coming and it's not going to matter anyway because it's so undercooked or whatever. But let's just say bigger things are afoot, even probably than you imagine. And it's really not going to matter. It's a perfectly fine sci-fi thriller with a good cast and certainly a director whose previous 2 movies I enjoyed. But The Box felt so middle of the road and like a little, I don't know what the word is. When something is like thinks it's clever, when in reality it's really not that clever.
Not pretentious.
No.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like I want to say convoluted, but that's not right.
No.
Contrived.
Maybe contrived. That's probably
Yeah.
that's probably a better word. Yeah.
It's a little contrived what they come up with, even if you don't guess where it's gonna go. Yeah. I mean, it's the movie that killed Richard Kelly's career.
Yeah, apparently.
I think Southland Tales probably did. And then he was like, okay, my weird, wacky epic, it didn't work. So let me use what cachet I have, get some big name stars, and make like a straightforward thriller. Because the last time I did that, Donnie Darko.
Right. And I'm pretty sure the budget for The Gift is not very high. Or The Box, whatever it's called.
The Box was $30 million.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And it made $33 million.
Okay. So
before advertising and everything like that.
Right.
So
Yes. Yeah. It broke even on production costs.
it lost money for sure.
Did not save the career of Richard Kelly.
And again, if you want to waste a Saturday afternoon with it, you're not going to be mad at it, but it's not going to be your favorite movie ever. That's for sure.
I remember hearing about this movie, and like the trailer is pretty much that setup. It's here's $1 million, but you got to press this button.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, well, what's the other 40 hour and 45 minutes of this movie going to be?
Well, I mean, it's not set present day,
Okay.
and it's related to government programs, I would say.
Okay. So there's a historical. Okay. All right. So
Which again is making it sound interesting when everything in the movie is not that interesting.
yeah, I guess maybe they could have done a better job of marketing the bigger conspiracy, because I just remember thinking like, well, this seems like a pretty like a short 20-minute film right here.
Sure. Yeah.
So okay. All right, my number 8. This is sort of a genre of trashy movie that my wife and I enjoy together, and this kind of also intersects with sci-fi, and that is Jason Statham movies. And this is 2018's The Meg, which is a Jason Statham movie about a giant ancient shark, a megalodon, being awoken from the depths of the Mariana Trench, coming to feed on unsuspecting swimmers, as only Jason Statham, a deep sea diver, can stop it. This movie is cheesy. This movie is all about effects, which are great to middling. This movie is trying to be other movies that are better, like Jaws, for example. It's like, hey, remember that scene in Jaws when the shark is swimming underneath a couple feet? What if it's swimming underneath thousands of feet in the Chinese Sea? You know?
Sure.
It really is like, let's just do everything we've already, like, remember The Abyss when we have an underwater base? Let's do that, but have Rainn Wilson be in charge of it. So it's just trying to be other movies that it is not.
Mm-hmm.
But it also kind of knows it's dumb and it's fun. And if you go into it with that, and if you have a weird appreciation for Jason Statham that me and my wife do, her name's also Megan, so the Meg is, kind of perfect for her. If they make a Meg 3, I'm gonna see it. There's no question about it. Assuming Statham's in it. If they make a Meg 3 without Statham, I'm out. But
I mean, why would they make another one without Jason Statham in it? He's clearly up for being in more of them.
Why not?
Sure.
The Meg 2's even more ridiculous, where like Statham has the ability to pick up a helicopter blade to wedge open a megalodon's mouth.
Sure.
And he's not a superhero. Like, he's just a guy.
Yep.
But he just has these moments of strength. They're stupid movies, but they're fun. There was also, I was thinking about this. Do you remember there was this weird time? It was like from 2010 until like the pandemic, where studios thought like, oh, we need the Chinese audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so big budget movies were, I want to say, almost pandering to the Chinese audiences by like having their movies set in China, or be like, oh yeah, and every movie has like a delegate from the Chinese military who's helping them out.
Sure.
And this movie's very much the same way, where like, the base is in the underwater base is run by China, and they have like Chinese action stars in it, and that we just don't see that in movies anymore. Like that was a thing for a while, and now people are like, the Chinese market will see what they're going to see. We don't need to put Chinese action stars in our movies.
Sure. Well, the Hollywood got burned by it.
Oh, okay, that's yeah.
They would budget the movie assuming they were going to get a release in China, and then they wouldn't get a release. It would be like, oh, all right. Well,
Oh, but we put all these Chinese names.
we put
in
all
it.
this stuff in here hoping it would
Yeah.
pass your board. Well, there was like this started in like the mid 2010s because there's a bunch of movies pre-pandemic too that had that stuff like jammed into it.
Right, yeah.
So they used to have, I don't know if it's a law because, it's China, but there was like a certain amount of movies, like a couple dozen movies every year that the government would allow to play in China. And they were trying to limit the amount of American movies or, foreign films because they want their own movies to play. They want patriotic Chinese movies to play. Basically.
Yes, homemade movies. Yeah,
Right, exactly. And they are very suspect of like Western culture taking a hold in China.
Yep.
And so they limited the amount of movies. Then at some point, they knocked that down to like 10 movies a year with like no warning, basically. And the ones that they would pick to allow in were not like based on how big they thought the box office would be. It was based on like whether Chinese movies had a competitor with it. So like if they felt that there was a Chinese movie that was similar to the one that you were trying to get into China, you're not getting in. Only the Chinese one's going to get in. But if you're offering something that they don't have a competitor for, then they'll allow that one in.
Okay,
Type of thing.
interesting.
Which meant that like big budget sci-fi CGI fests, they make those in China too. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah, they have their own big studios over there. So.
Right. So the last couple of years, a lot of the movies that have made it in are like small movies, or smaller than they were in the 2010s.
Yeah.
And regularly, like I think there was a movie in China that just this past weekend broke a record, like a global record for.
Okay.
I forget what the record was, but it was insane.
Yeah, but I was looking at the like global top 100 box office movies of all time, and there's 3 or 4 Chinese movies on that list that I've never heard of before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Their movie, I don't know what industry, I guess you'd call it, is kind of amazing. It just kind of happens over there. They don't even export their movies. It's like all the money it's making is like in their own country.
Because they have 3 times the amount of people that we have.
I know, but it's still insane to me that like Avatar 2 or whatever makes a ton of money, but only half of that's here. You know what I mean? The rest of it's all over the world.
Yeah. I think we're on your number 7.
Yeah. Ziha 2 is the name of the movie.
Oh, okay.
It's an animated movie. It's the world's highest grossing movie of all time in a single market.
Okay, so it made just the Chinese market and made all its money.
Just in the Chinese market since January 29th, which was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, not that long ago.
$1.4 billion.
Just in China.
Just in China.
Wow.
Isn't that
Yeah,
crazy?
because like Titanic broke. What was it? Titanic and Avengers Endgame both broke a B, but that's international.
In 2 weeks, did they break?
No. It took
Titanic a long time.
No, I should say Avatar.
I understand what you're saying.
Yes, yeah. Avatar and Endgame. No, not 2 weeks. It took them. I mean, Avatar took over a decade.
I think maybe, like Avatar and Endgame, I think those might have broken a B in 2 weeks, but with international money.
Oh, really? Within 2 weeks? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about original Avatar, but maybe Way of Water. I don't know. We'd have to look at the chart.
I gotta look it up.
It wouldn't surprise me if in 2 weeks they had hit 1 billion because both those movies broke 2 billion.
Oh, they broke 2 billion. Not. Oh, okay. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. That they both. Okay.
Right.
I thought they each broke just a B, but if they broke 2B, that's
no. We have a couple of movies that have broken 2 billion now, which is
Okay.
crazy.
That's crazy. So I have no idea what I'm talking about then.
That's fine.
Okay.
You've never claimed to be a box office guy. That's for
No,
sure.
that's one of my. Whenever you guys play, like, hey, how much money did this movie make? I have no clue. I'm terrible at that.
Sure. No sweat. Okay.
I can tell you like what year some movie came out in the 80s, but
I mean, that's better than me. Actually, I do all right. I do all right with almost every year I've been alive.
okay,
But anything behind when I've been alive,
gets a little challenging.
I might be able to get the decade. All right. Number 7, 1984. Starman. And this is probably the first one that somebody might be mad at me for.
Okay.
Starman. Speaking of John Carpenter, this is a John Carpenter movie starring Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen. Jeff Bridges literally plays an alien that looks like Jeff Bridges that comes to Earth, and then he gets in a romance. And this is like a classic 80s sci-fi-ish movie, sci-fi romance. And it's so plain Jane. It's so boring.
Yeah.
It's like clear. It's clear that they're trying to capitalize on the E.T., the Close Encounters type stuff, but they have no budget. So they can't really do anything other than have Jeff Bridges walk around and act like a weirdo.
And just look like Jeff Bridges. No makeup.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really bad, but not bad. It wasn't bad. It was just maybe overhyped for me. And then when I watched it, I was like, this feels completely average. I don't know why anybody has nostalgia for this because this is very not remarkable, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, my number 7, Starman.
I've heard of that, but yeah, not really familiar with it whatsoever. My number 7 is a movie that I don't think is great, but I'm also going to defend.
Okay.
And that is Equilibrium from 2002.
Oh, this one will make me mad. I like Equilibrium a lot.
That's totally fine.
Sure.
I think this is not a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
Directed by Kurt, is it Wimmer or Wimmer? It's probably Wimmer, right?
No clue.
Okay. It stars Christian Bale, Taye Diggs, and Sean Bean are probably the 3 biggest names. I think there's a British guy in there too. I'm not sure. Anyway, this movie takes place in a dystopian future. Christian Bale and Taye Diggs, they're these, I'm not even sure what their titles are. They're like these enforcers where they live in a society where there's no emotion, there's no art, there's no creativity. People take pills to control their emotions, and their job is to rid the world of any contraband, which could be anything like a book or a piece of music. And then Christian Bale's character starts to question his role within this dystopian society, and there's other things going on. This movie is very much like, it feels like a bunch of other ideas. You know, Brave New World gave this idea of like people controlling their emotions. 1984 with the surveillance state. This movie is all very concrete and brutal looking, not brutalist, but brutal looking. A lot of just like square buildings. It's not a very pretty movie to look at. This movie I'm going to defend this movie on its fact that people say it's a ripoff of The Matrix, because the big part of this movie is something called gun kata, which is like gun-based karate in this movie. And it's a lot of wire work. Also, the main characters wear kind of these long, flowy trench coat style wardrobe. Robes, right.
Yeah.
And like a couple years before this, The Matrix had come out. So I think people saw The Matrix, which was a huge movie. Then they saw Equilibrium, and they're like, oh, well, they're gunfighting, and they wear robes, and it's all dystopian. And my defense of Equilibrium is I don't really think Kurt Wimmer was ripping off The Matrix. I just think that was the style at the time. Like, if you watch Blade, which came out before The Matrix, Blade's got gunfighting and wire work, and he's wearing a big long trench coat.
Mhm.
Like, it was just the style at the time. But no one saw Blade and thought, oh, Matrix ripped that off, because Blade was not as big of a movie as Matrix. Matrix was
Sure.
huge. So anyone who's doing anything similar to that style afterwards was just seen as like, oh, this is a ripoff of it. Equilibrium, I think, is a worse movie than The Matrix. I'm not saying it's as good, but I don't think it's fair to call this a ripoff or like it was trying to capitalize on The Matrix. I think it was just capitalizing on the genre at the time.
I think it has certainly some passing similarities to The Matrix. I think
Yes.
that's fair. But also, I don't think it's, and I don't think they made a movie trying to get the Matrix crowd. I
Correct,
think
yes.
it's its own thing that happens to have passing similarities to,
Yes.
to the Matrix. And it has a killer cast. And I think like the mind control stuff in it and stuff like that, I think is pretty solid. And that's not really, I guess Matrix has, I guess, versions of that. But
Yes.
but like you can't, yeah, we don't have to go into it. But and there's no like bullet time in it. Like, is every martial arts movie going to be compared to The Matrix after The Matrix comes out? You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Like
Yeah.
the action wasn't even similar.
No, it just happened to be guys in robes with guns doing
Right.
kicks and things like that. So,
Exactly.
yeah, no, and I think the action's actually probably the best part of the movie is the action itself. It's well shot. It's interesting to look at.
It's very
It's different.
serious. Whereas The Matrix is like not that serious. When I watch The Matrix, I don't take it seriously.
Okay.
I think it's fun. It's like it too is just an amalgamation of like a bunch of other things, like
Yeah.
souped together in an interesting way. I feel like The Matrix is like the adventure version. And what's the name of the movie? I'm drawing a blank.
Equilibrium.
Equilibrium is
Yeah.
more like the
It's-
pre-Denny Villeneuve version of The Matrix.
Yes, right, because it's trying much more to be like, about the surveillance state and mind control, and like those things are in the Matrix, but the Matrix is like, oh, you're a battery,
Right.
and then this movie is all like, you can't have emotion, and it's a little like Fahrenheit 451. We're gonna burn the books, and
Sure.
it takes itself way more serious than the Matrix does.
Mhm.
I mean, the Matrix has I know kung fu, and I don't think there's any moment of levity whatsoever in Equilibrium.
No. There's probably maybe one or two.
Okay,
but
maybe,
nothing compared to.
No.
I mean, that's why The Matrix is so popular. It's like very snappy. The sci-fi is like very surface level. Anybody can really follow it.
Yep.
And even if you don't want to follow the sci-fi part, like the Messiah stuff with Neo and stuff like that is like there, and it's a well-trodden
Everyone
story.
knows that's that arc. Yes.
All right, for sure.
Yep.
So I'm going to disagree only because I think Equilibrium I think it stands on its own, I guess.
Okay. I totally fair. I think it's a very watchable movie with interesting things going on in it. Better than Awake, that's for sure.
Okay. My number 6 is from 1979, The Black Hole, which is
I've never seen this one either.
a Disney movie, a sci-fi movie produced by Walt Disney Productions. So 1979, you're talking 2 years after Star Wars comes out.
Yeah.
Star Wars comes out, is number 1 at the box office for like 3/4 of the year it was released. I mean, that movie just went and went and went. People went back to it over and over and over again. So of course the other studios are like, man, we need our own Star Wars. And so they took this script that had long been in production that was about people on a spaceship, like a disaster movie on a spaceship, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
And they took that script and then like tried to cram as much Star Wars-y stuff as they could into it, even though that's not what the original script was. And when you watch it, you will just feel it. You will just feel the desperation of the people making it to make the next Star Wars. And it's kind of amazing because the production design of the black hole, you're talking 2 years after Star Wars. And for some reason, the visuals of Star Wars, even though there's a little bit of 70s skin left on that movie, even to this day, even like the special edition versions, like you watch them, it's clearly a movie from the 70s. A lot of the production design and stuff like that from that movie, you know, you see similar designs in Rogue One. It holds up.
Right.
It looks good. It's well designed. And the black hole is just so incredibly stuck in the 70s, I would say. It's interesting for some of those reasons, but it is nothing more than a curiosity, I would say. And the curiosity is only going to take you so far, because eventually you're just kind of left with this dumb plot with all these characters that are not C-3PO and are not Luke Skywalker. And you know what I mean? Like, they're like, most of the characters from Star Wars have their own doppelganger in Black Hole, even if it doesn't make any sense why that person would be doing some of the things they're doing in the movie. So anyway, Black Hole, certainly a movie you can waste a Saturday afternoon with, but not worth much more than that, in my opinion.
I'm going to go on a little tangent here because this movie reminds me of Silent Running. Have you seen that movie?
No.
With Bruce Dern?
What is it?
So Silent Running came out in 1972. It's a space movie that is capitalizing on 2001: A Space Odyssey, which came out in 1968. Kind of the same idea of like, oh, we need to make our own kind of space Odyssey movie. The interesting thing is the person who directs it, Douglas Trumbolt, I think his name is.
Yep.
He's the guy who's responsible for the effects of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, and Blade Runner.
And Blade Runner.
Cool.
He is not a good movie director. And I think that's Silent Running is a good example of that, of like, you know, stay in your lane, because the ships in Silent Running look really cool. They look like kind of, you know, post 2001 pre Star Wars ships. Like they have all that detail to them, and it's all very tactile, and they're lighted and shot well. Or actually, they're not shot well. That's the problem, because he's not a good director. So they're cool. They're designed well, but they're shot to look like models. And then the story itself is about like the environment and the future. And it's like, okay, this is definitely a studio being like, we need our own 2001: A Space Odyssey. We don't need a Kubrick. We just need the guy who did the special effects. And you realize, okay, yeah, the director is important to a movie also, not just how it looks.
This movie looks interesting, but you're saying it's not, huh?
No, it's interesting as an oddity.
Right.
And it's interesting because you can tell they're trying so hard to make the next, or they're trying to ride the coattails of 2001.
Sure.
And like I think it's interesting because like you can draw a direct parallel between 2001 and Star Wars, and like Silent Running feels like the bad movie in between. Like what's the missing link? And Silent Running is your missing link of like, how do we take the effects of 2001 but give it the action of like a Star Wars? And Silent Running just can't pull it off either way.
Okay. It's already on my watch list, evidently.
Yeah, I think it's interesting enough that it's worth a watch. I don't think it's a good movie though.
The budget's kind of insane.
What's the budget on that?
1972, $1.3 million.
I mean, probably on ship design.
I mean, $1.3 million, even in 1972, does not feel like a lot of money for a sci-fi movie.
Okay, is that low? Maybe, I don't know. See, I don't know budgets.
Low. It feels low, even for 19. Like, what was? Let's find out the budget for 2001. 2001 space. Let's see. We're talking budget-wise, $10.5 million.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
that's the budget
low.
for a sci-fi movie in the 70s. Yeah, interesting.
Oh, the other interesting thing. Have you ever watched the original Battlestar Galactica? Like the 1970s one?
The TV show?
The TV show, yeah.
I've seen like an episode or so.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say I've watched it. You know what I mean?
But you're familiar with it.
Yeah. But I watched the reboot series.
Reboot series, great.
I love the reboot series.
Some of the ships from Silent Running were repurposed for the Battlestar Galactica TV show.
Oh, okay.
So
the original one.
The original, but a lot of those ship designs were also used in the reboot. So you may recognize some ships from Silent Running as being like, oh, those are Battlestar Galactica ships.
I wonder if Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, holds up. It's been a long time since I've watched that show.
Megan and I watched it 10 years ago. We watched it again in our old house, or 5 or 10 years ago, pre-pandemic. And I think the first 3 or 4 seasons held up pretty well. And we kind of just didn't watch the last season because I remember the last season being sort of a dud. But
it gets a little weird. It gets ethereal.
It gets a little too like navel gazing upon itself and like the greater world. Yeah.
But how do you not finish that series? I would have finished it.
I think just because, you know why we didn't finish it? Our son was born.
Okay. You got busy.
We got busy and we're like, well, we watched all the good seasons anyway. So like with my limited time and sleep I have, I'm not going to watch a season I know I don't like.
There's some good stuff in the last season. You guys should come back to it someday. I'm not saying now, but someday.
Oh, so we were on like Apple TV a couple months ago and they had the entire series on sale for like $30. So I bought it.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So
you're invested.
It's sitting there. It's just when we're ready to like get back into Battlestar Galactica, it's there waiting for us.
Sure. Nice.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Anyway.
My number 5?
No, it is my number 6 still.
Oh, okay. I thought we just talked about Cool Runnings or whatever.
Silent Running?
Yeah.
No, that was my tangent just because.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Black Hole reminded me of Silent Running.
Okay.
I'll be quick then. My number 6 is a 2017 movie directed by Luc Besson, Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. This movie stars Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne, and they play they play agents in this future who have to go on special missions. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. I mean, this is a future sci-fi movie. This is Luc Besson making like his own Star Wars like world where you're going to planets that feel lived in. You're going to space stations that feel lived in. It's sort of like taking his city design of Fifth Element, which I think is a better movie, but he really kind of blows it out in Valerian in the City of 1,000 Planets. And it's actually a really fun movie just because it is such a well-realized world that he creates. And there's some interesting things he does with this world. Ethan Hawke pops up in this movie as like a runner of like a nightclub, who's just kind of a random cameo. My biggest issue with this movie is Dane DeHaan, and he's kind of cast as like this. He's cast as Han Solo essentially, and he's just so boyish. I do not buy him as like this rogue whatsoever. And like Cara Delevingne, who's this beautiful model, is supposed to be like attracted to his roguishness. I'm like, I don't buy this relationship whatsoever. So the main casting really dragged the movie down, and I can't tell you what the plot is whatsoever. I remember this movie just looking really cool and being like, oh, I don't mind being in this world that Luc Besson has created. And it's unfortunately it's Luc Besson. I think the camera kind of lingers on Cara Delevingne at times too. You're just kind of like, okay, man, like don't be gross.
I don't remember that part of it.
Okay.
It's another one I disagree with. I mean, I thought Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets was awesome. I was totally bummed when it bombed because we're not going to get any more of it probably.
No, we're not going to get any more of it.
But when I saw Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets, I was like, this is what they should be doing with Star Wars. Like, it felt absolutely like a side Star Wars movie.
It completely does. I agree. Yes.
Yeah. And it wouldn't have taken much to just be like, yeah, here's a Star Wars movie. Star Wars : Valerian.
Yeah, I mean, you could have made this movie Solo instead of the Solo we got.
Right.
This could have been Solo because it's Han Solo is the main character of this movie.
Yeah. And like it's Luc Besson. Like he made
Fifth Element.
He made Fifth Element.
Yeah.
And like Fifth Element feels like a world that that exists, that somebody didn't just like design on a piece of paper for some reason. I think that's part of the reason why that movie has gained or kept the following maybe it had. And Valerian in a City of Thousand Planets, I think, is a movie that, as people discover it over time, more and more will like it. It's kind of a bummer that it has an ending, but it's definitely a movie that wanted to do more with what was set up and just never got there. So that's a bummer. Whereas like Fifth Element is like a movie from beginning to end. There's no reason to make another one of those. This one, they wanted it to be a franchise. That was clear.
Right, they could have.
Yeah, this is another one where I feel like there's more there than just watching it and letting it go away. My number 5 is a 2005 science fiction action movie titled The Island from Michael Bay.
Oh yeah, familiar with this.
Yeah, so this movie, what to say about it? It's a Michael Bay movie, so it's filled with action, and the camera constantly moves. It will never stop moving. It will circle characters as they just spout exposition, basically, for no reason whatsoever. But that's his style. And it's a sci-fi movie about like in this society, there's like the real people, and then they've cloned themselves. That way, if they ever need an organ or something, they can just take it from the clone version of them. And the movie stars Scarlett Johansson and Ewan McGregor as like the primary two people. Oh, and Sean Bean's in this too. Somebody.
Oh, also in Equilibrium.
Yeah, also in Equilibrium. And so Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson kind of figure out that they're the clones. And so they want to escape because they don't want to lose their appendix to their what would you, if you're a clone, what do you call the original? Like
your prime, probably.
Oh, okay, prime.
Ooh, I know. I just thought that kind of pull it out. Of
Hey,
nowhere,
that works.
I feel really smart with that one.
No, I mean that kind of makes sense to me. So anyway, it's fine. You know, it feels like the premise should make it better than it actually is, but Michael Bay, as per usual, gets in the way of himself, I would say.
Yeah.
Like some of his filmmaking style is not helpful when you're trying to tell a layered story. He's not really interested in that. He's more interested in telling a straightforward action movie, and he leaves the sci-fi to the side. And a little frustrating. It's also a movie, very much like some of the other ones on this list, that is just an amalgamation of much better things. And the Michael Bay-ness of it maybe gives it a little bit of a hook, a reason to check it out. But for the most part, you know, it'll entertain you, but that's about it. You'll walk away with like literally no, like the premise itself is ripe for some social commentary, right? Just the existence of that premise, the idea of like the others and like using people for their body parts, and the idea of like, do clones have a soul? Are they actually people at that point? These are all questions the movie raises and then does nothing with. Short of the clones don't want to have their organs taken from them, so they're running. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
that's
why it's an action movie.
That's the farthest the commentary goes. So, my number 5, The Island.
Isn't the talking version of this movie called Never Let Me Go, which is an Alex Garland?
Yes.
Right? It's the same. I don't know if I spoiled Never Let Me Go or not, but
I mean, and Never Let Me Go came way after this. So that's an example of taking something that already exists, or like pieces of different things that already exist, and like making a new version of it.
Yeah.
That's more interesting than the original.
Also, if we were to live in a dystopian future where we were to clone ourselves as like body part farms, wouldn't we just keep our clones in like a medical coma just as needed? Like I don't think I'd want to get into the ethics of it has a life and it can go in for relationships. Like just keep it in a coma, keep it in it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking like today's technology, I don't think you could actually do that because
No, we can't clone humans either. So
I'm just saying, like these humans are like born on the same day you're born.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? And like their body parts progress at the same rate as yours.
They're just raised
theory.
in tandem on a separate. Interesting. Okay.
Right. I mean, that's what the movie puts forth.
Yes.
It's a little silly because like a 40-year-old man can donate a liver to like a 10-year-old child.
Right. I don't need I don't need my liver. Exactly.
Right. Exactly. But anyway.
I also would hope if we ever get to the point where we can clone humans, we can also probably just hopefully grow a liver in a lab.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Like I don't think we need the clones in the first place.
I could get rid of my fatty liver.
There you go. Get a new one. Throw it in a lab. 3D print it.
Yep.
I want a 3D printed liver, please.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. My number 5. I'm going to say my top 5 might be controversial because I'm sure some people would be like, oh, what? These are good movies. And I do agree that all of these are movies that are good to a point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my top 5 are also movies that are like, they're all good enough, but they're not great.
Sure.
And I think a great example of good enough sci-fi is 2013's Pacific Rim, directed by Guillermo del Toro.
Okay.
This movie stars, the guy, I can't think of his name. He's
the guy from Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy, Charlie Hunnam.
Yep.
Idris Elba, Ron Perlman, again, talking about the capturing the Chinese market in this era. Rinko Kikuchi is also in this movie, as well as Charlie Day. So this movie takes place in a near future where giant kaiju, giant monsters, are coming out of the sea and attacking cities on the coast, both in America and in Asia. And the world's response to that is to build equally large robots, which I think have a name. Oh, I don't know what they're called, though.
Don't they each individually have a name?
They do. I don't know if there's a name for like the class of robots, but
okay.
yeah, each one has its own individual name.
Keep
so anyway,
going. I'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out. So the world response is, well, the only way we can fight a giant monster is if we build our own giant robot and have them be these protectors of our coastal cities and have them fight the kaiju as they show up. This movie is an excuse for monsters to fight. It's essentially a Godzilla movie that is not Godzilla. And you could tell this movie is first focused on the action and the effects and less on the story, because I want to say this is maybe the most cliched movie I've ever seen, where you have Charlie Hunnam is playing this kind of burnt out soldier who could be really great if only he could find himself, and he's got his own mysterious past. And Idris Elba is kind of like the colonel who's trying to, inspire him to be better. He has to learn how to work with someone else who's the Rinko Kikuchi character. Everything about this movie, plot-wise, especially like the human character relationship, is so boilerplate and so like first draft. But then you get to these giant fighting monsters and robots in the ocean, and you don't care about anything else because it's cool, because it's done so well, because it's Guillermo del Toro, who's a good director, even with a mediocre script.
Yeah, I disagree on this one. I love this movie. I find it so entertaining from one side to the other. It's like to me, it's a good example of like a sci-fi movie where you could get bogged down in the details, but they know why people are watching this movie. It's not the details of why or when or any of those things. Those they give you in like the first 3 minutes, like the opening credits. They give you everything you need to know.
Yes.
And the rest of the movie is just like heightened marine stuff and kaiju fights.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
But then like the greater plot of the humans is so cliche, and
it's really dumb.
Like the things they say to each other are just like straight out of common conversations. So
sure. The robots were called Jaegers.
Jaegers, thank you. I knew they had a name. I couldn't think of what it was. Yep.
I looked it up. I did not remember
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate that.
Yep. My number 4 is from 1983. This is another one that like people will probably be mad at me. But a movie that is just okay.
Okay.
That's a sci-fi movie from 1983. It's called War Games. Starring Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, I could see some people being mad at you about that.
Like
that's a hot take.
War Games is, I understand like if it is the 80s, right?
Yes.
And like you're still scared that like Russia's gonna bomb the US with a nuke. You know what I mean? Like Cold War was still going and
right.
stuff like that. I get it why this is like, plus like computers weren't really, or the internet wasn't really a thing. The personal computer wasn't really a thing. Like people having computers at home was a very new thing in the early 80s. And so I can understand if you were young and you saw this movie and you were like, wow, like that's crazy. But you watch it today and man, this movie, it's not like even like a dated thing. It's just not much happens. And every time something happens, it kind of gets resolved without any of the characters actually doing anything.
Okay.
It just kind of like resolves itself. Like the computer just resolves basically. Like almost at the, like none of the characters actually do anything to have the movie finish, if that makes sense.
They're not influencing the outcome of the story.
What's going to happen happens, and all these characters are just kind of running around trying to figure out what's going on.
Right, because so much of it is like the compute. Okay, yeah, it's been a while since I've seen War Games,
right?
But I remember a lot of it is the computer learning.
It's about a teenager who hacks into a computer system to play video games. What he doesn't realize is he's actually hacking into like NORAD.
Yes.
And he's running a simulation on the NORAD's computer systems, of which the humans who work in NORAD believe it's an actual attack and not a simulation.
So, right. He's playing a game called like Thermonuclear War or something like that.
Right.
Yes.
So the question is, will the U.S. military strike back, or will they wait to confirm that like the Russians are actually attacking?
Yes.
And like even as like a time capsule for like Matthew Broderick and his love interest, Ali Sheedy.
Right.
Second time that name came up this episode.
She's the girl from Breakfast Club, right?
Ali Sheedy, yes, Breakfast Club, and she was also in Short Circuit. She was the love interest in Short Circuit. Do you remember Short Circuit?
Barely. Yes.
Barely. Yeah, it's not like that movie's amazing or anything, but
you know, I remember Mac and Me better than I remember Short Circuit.
I don't think I've ever actually seen Mac and Me.
Oh, really?
I've seen that clip a bunch.
Oh, yeah, of the from Conan O'Brien.
Right.
Oh, yeah. No, I've definitely seen Mac and Me.
Short Circuit has to be better than Mac and Me.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I just don't like. I feel like I watch Mac and Me more than I watch Short Circuit.
Sure. Well, it was Mac and Me was like early 90s, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Probably.
It's
probably early 90s. Yeah. Where Short Circuit's like in the 80s.
Anyway, if you think War Games is a good movie, you're wrong, and you need to rewatch it with your nostalgia glasses off.
Okay.
It's not really that good of a movie. It's a well-timed movie.
Right.
Like, I think clearly they struck a nerve, but given time and distance, not a good movie. My number 4.
I have not seen. I did not see War Games in the 80s. I saw it in the early 90s, like it was a rental. I saw it once. I liked it at the time, but I haven't seen it since, and I don't know if I will. I don't know if I need to watch War Games again.
Don't bother.
Okay, I'm gonna pass on it. All right, another rental staple of mine from the high school, middle school era is 1997's Event Horizon. So directed by Paul W.S. Anderson.
I love Event Horizon. You are picking movies that I love.
That's great. Again, none of these movies are bad movies that I'm picking.
Sure.
They're all I like when we were doing trashy. This is also my trashy list because I think this is a kind of trashy movie.
It is a trashy sci-fi movie. I'll give you that.
Yes,
for sure.
This is a sci-fi horror movie that's set in the near future. Stars Sam Neill, and he is running an expedition to salvage a ship called the Event Horizon, which disappeared and then reappeared. However, they find evil on board the Event Horizon is probably the best way to explain this. And then a bunch of grotesque horror things happen once they're on the ship. I guess this movie also stars Lawrence Fishburne. I forgot he was in it, as well as Jason Isaacs. That's a name I recognize. But yeah, probably the two names you recognize are Lawrence Fishburne and Sam Neill. And yeah, this movie I remember this movie being like a scary horror action, like sci-fi movie when it came out, because there's so many seeds of like this other dimension. I'm not going to spoil Event Horizon, but let's just say there's interdimensional things going on. And the other dimension is a place, it's like Hellraiser. It's a place of pain and agony and torture. And this movie gives you lots of clips of that pain and agony and torture throughout it. You also have Sam Neill kind of slowly going insane as he's on this ship and succumbing to it. And he does some self-mutilation, I guess we could put, in this movie. And I remember like this was the movie that if me and like some friends were like having some girls over, we're gonna put Event Horizon on. Sure. Because like it's a little scary, like they'll be a little creeped out. We've seen it before, so we can be like, oh yeah, we know what's happening. Like this is the perfect like let's watch it in a group to impress the girls kind of movie.
Sure, I guess. I don't know. I can't imagine putting Event Horizon on for a bunch of girls. That is a very guy movie. I would say.
Well, I'm not saying it worked well, but we just thought it was a good idea at the time.
Sure.
Like, you know what? It'll make the girls get all scared and then wants to cuddle up with us because, they're watching people being tortured on screen.
That's what I mean. Like, you probably would have done better with like a slasher movie or something like that.
Like Halloween or something like that. Yeah. Or Urban Legends. That was the other one.
It's definitely the only Paul W.S. Anderson movie that I would say personally I think is good.
Yes.
Like Mortal Kombat from 1995, that's also a Paul W.S. Anderson movie. I have nostalgic love for that movie, but I would never tell anybody that's a good movie. And he made almost all the Resident Evil movies. He didn't direct all of them, but he directed more than half of them. He directed that Three Musketeers movie that we reviewed a year ago or so. Remember the Three Musketeers movie with
we didn't,
or maybe we talked about it.
We talked about it, but yeah, I haven't seen that one specifically.
Okay,
but yeah,
you haven't seen the one with Orlando Bloom and Mila Jovovich. Okay, you should watch that movie.
Is he married to Mila Jovovich now?
They were married. I don't think they are anymore.
Because she was married to Luc Besson first, correct? Or maybe not.
No, I think she's always been married to Paul W.S. Anderson.
Oh, okay. Maybe I missed.
I mean, let's we have the internet here.
We have the internet. Why not? We have nothing else to do.
Oh, nope, they're married.
She and
Paul W.S. Anderson.
Okay, was she ever involved with Luc Besson?
Married 2009. You're right. She was married to Luc Besson from 97 to 99. You knew that little 2-year window. They were married.
Well, because he made Fifth Element with her, and he also made like The Messenger or whatever it's called, the Joan of Arc movie with her, right?
Right.
Yeah. Telling you, I can't tell you what a movie budget is, But I can tell you that Luc Besson and Mila Jovovich were married for a very short amount of time before she left him for Paul W.S. Anderson.
I wouldn't say she left him for Paul W.S. Anderson.
I know. It was like 10 years later.
There's 10 years distance between the divorce and the second marriage. So
look, how I remember things is I just have to cut out all that dead time in between.
Sure. I just got Event Horizon on 4K. I can't wait to rewatch it.
I want to rewatch it. I'm kind of scared to rewatch it too because it is graphic at times, but I don't remember it. Maybe I'm just like, maybe it's just not graphic by my standards now.
It's pretty, it gets there.
I remember like some of those shots of like the other dimension being pretty, oh my God. And there's like a ghost woman, like isn't Sam Neill's wife? She's dead and she's kind of haunting him around the ship.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that being kind of creepy.
Similar stuff similar to what you're saying happens. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to watch it again. It might be too creepy.
And
I
think
definitely
you can handle it.
Probably. Megan will not want to watch it. It will not work on her.
That's probably true.
If she didn't like The Gorge, she's not going to like Event Horizon whatsoever.
All right, we're on number 3.
Yes.
My third movie is from 1996. It's Phenomenon.
Oh.
The romantic fantasy starring John Travolta. Also in the movie, Kira Sedgwick, Forrest Whitaker, and Robert Duvall, amongst others. And yeah, John Travolta, what is he, like a farmer or something like that? He's like a
or he has an orchard or
yeah, he works with his hands. He's like a he's a normal middle class dude, I would say.
He's a Joe Plumber kind of guy.
Right. And he's outside at night and he sees like a shooting star or something like that. And magically he has powers now. But they're not like the fun, cool, awesome powers. They're like he can read fast.
Well, he's a little telekinetic.
Sure.
He's a little clairvoyant.
Right.
Right. He's not Superman. He's like Daredevil. He's just a little enhanced in everything he can do.
Right. And he is a self-hating superhero because he is very frustrated. Why did they give me this power? I'm nobody special. They should give it to the geniuses of the world. Blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, there's this romance going on with Kira Sedgwick, and it's all just very surface level boring, I would say. It's fine. If you want like very light sci-fi, like real world, no weird aliens, no special effects whatsoever for the most part, unless you count like a pen sliding across the table, a special effect.
And he spins some sunglasses in his hand.
Yeah. I mean, it's very light fare, I would say. Then Phenomenon is definitely a movie you can waste a Saturday afternoon watching, but it is not a good movie, in my opinion.
It's a sappy movie.
It's a passable movie.
Yeah. And it's also the movie that gave us the terrible trope of humans only use 10% of their brains.
Really? Is that where everybody got that from?
I remember that being a big part of this movie of being like, he's like, oh, most humans only use 10% of their brains, but he's now using 50% of his brain or whatever. We're like, no, we all use 100% of our brain.
Sure.
So
it's a John Turteltaub movie. That's a name I have not heard in a long time.
He directed another movie. Hold on, which one did he direct?
The Meg. He directed
The Meg. That's it. There we go. The Meg. Yep.
John Turteltaub, who you might remember from Cool Runnings, Three Ninjas, National Treasure 1 and 2. That's about it. Everything else you probably wouldn't remember him from.
God, how much does Three Ninjas probably not hold up at all?
I mean, see, in 1992, I was like 14, so I wasn't really into Three Ninjas.
Oh, okay.
I was like just old enough to be like, oh, that's baby crap.
I was 9
right.
and I had it on VHS.
Absolutely.
And me and my brother watched Three Ninjas so much.
Yep. I can imagine. I doubt it holds up, but if you have nostalgia for it, like I understand completely.
Like I might need to watch it for nostalgia purposes, but I think also I won't be surprised at all. I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember this entire, like I think I can recite most of the movie by memory anyway.
Sure.
So nothing's going to be surprising. Like, oh, I forgot about that. Like, oh yeah, okay. I remember it all.
Nice.
All right, my number 3 is actually, this is a recent movie that I saw, as in like the last year or two. This is 2013's Europa Report. It's directed by Sebastian Cordero,
Mhm.
and this stars, the only name I really recognize is Michael Nyquist, maybe Sharlto Copley. People might recognize that name too.
Yeah, from
And Isaiah. Okay, go ahead.
District 9.
Yes, as well as Isaiah Whitlock Jr. He also is camp credited in this movie, but I don't think he's a main cast member. So this is a found footage sci-fi movie. It's probably the best way to describe it. And it is about a crew that is heading to Europa, which is one of the moons of Jupiter, to explore it. Europa is covered in ice, and there is a scientific belief that if we were to find any sort of like alien anything, it would probably be on Europa because it's covered in ice, meaning it had water at one point, so probably had atmosphere, it could have had life. So there might be frozen aliens on the moon of Jupiter. Define alien how you want it to be. So it is definitely a planet of interest in the scientific community. And so in this movie, the crew goes to Europa. Something happens while they're there, and we're kind of getting their found footage tapes of their helmet cams, of their videos within the spaceship as they're going on this voyage. This movie it's interesting because I've not seen a found footage sci-fi movie before. I would say it's horror at times, but it's definitely more of the sci-fi aspect of things. And it does give you a interesting story. My biggest issue with this movie is that it jumps around in time. It's not told linear. It's sort of giving you like 30 days into the trip, and then the day they leave, and then 90 days in the trip. And I don't know why it jumps around, except to try and like build dramatic tension of like, you're like, oh, that character's not there anymore. Why did they die? And then you find out earlier how they died, but it didn't really do much for me. I think it made the movie worse, the fact that it was jumping around in time. And I think if they had just written a better, like, cohesive story, then they could have told it still found footage wise, but in chronological order instead of jumping all around. But they do get to Europa, and I think interesting things happen once they're actually on the planet. Again, this is a low budget sci-fi movie, so we're not getting, like giant kaiju or anything like that, but they do something with their low budget that I found to be interesting.
Nice.
Are you familiar with this movie at all?
I am.
Okay.
Your description of it meant nothing to me, but I looked it up on Letterboxd, and I have seen this movie. I gave it 2 stars.
Yeah, I think some people will find something interesting with it. Others will be like, yeah, that was a found footage sci-fi movie that didn't give me much, but
right.
I found something interesting.
I don't remember anything about it, to be honest.
Yeah. It's one of those movies that was like, it's always on Netflix, and it's always be like, oh, you like sci-fi, watch this movie. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll check it out.
Sure. Nice. All right. We are on the last 2 here.
It's not a tumor.
Number 2 from 2014, Young Ones. If you haven't heard of this movie, I don't blame you.
No, I've not heard of this movie.
It's an action sci-fi post-apocalypse movie, I would say. I think it's post-apocalypse. I don't remember. Starring Nicholas Hoult, star of Juror Number 2.
Oh, yes. His most famous role.
Yep. And Elle Fanning and Michael Shannon and Cody Smith-McPhee.
Okay.
This is 4 actors that I like.
Yeah.
I think they're all interesting actors who all generally can pick very interesting projects. I was also really sold by the trailer, which it's like a sci-fi movie, but like kind of with a lot of outdoor bright desert locations. Very reminiscent of like Tatooine from Star Wars. And so I was like, yeah, I'm down for like a not necessarily like an action sci-fi movie, but like a sci-fi movie with like some hard sci-fi and like some survival to it and stuff like that. And I don't know, this movie was kind of boring. and they never really, like, everybody's fighting over water. Like water is like the big thing. And it's like, okay. Like you could have set this at any time, basically. And the one thing I'll say that sticks in my brain from like a memory perspective has nothing to do with the plot or the acting or anything like that. It has to do with how well they blended CGI in the movie. Like everything that exists in this movie feels like it was actually there when clearly a lot of it was not. And by a lot of it, I mean like a lot of the machines and the robots that help them kind of like cultivate the land and stuff like that was not there. But it all looks very lived in and dirty and weathered. And I just remember being impressed by that one thing that ultimately doesn't matter compared to a good story. Okay. The story was fine. Oh, what was that?
Balloons.
'Cause I did this. 'Cause I did this.
For people who don't know, James is Zoom. For whatever reason, he has certain gestures. Things will pop up on his screen.
Yeah.
And Zach and I can't recreate them. But like right now, James is just like gesturing with the number 2, and then a bunch of balloons came across. Yeah, he'll give a thumbs up, and a little thumbs up will appear next to him.
I don't think it actually records in.
No, I don't think if you watch the video, you're going to see it. But like for us who are, as we're talking, random things will appear on his Zoom feed as he's talking because of whatever gesture he does that we can't do. So
yeah,
thanks for the balloons.
So if you want kind of like a gritty movie about water farming, it's not even gritty. If you want like a sci-fi movie about water farming with a great cast, it's kind of like Gorge. Like the cast was not my problem with Gorge. The cast is not my problem with this movie. It's just that like not much happens. That's the problem with this movie. So it's directed by Jake Paltrow. Is this a little bit of a nepotism thing going on here with the Paltrows? He's the younger brother of Gwyneth Paltrow.
Okay. Yeah, because I think Gwyneth's kids aren't quite director age yet.
So Gwyneth Paltrow's a nepotism baby too.
Who's her famous father or parent?
Bruce Paltrow has his own Wikipedia entry.
Who's he? I've never heard of him.
He was the producer of the television series The White Shadow and Saint Elsewhere.
Okay, I've heard of Saint Elsewhere. Okay, so he was in The Biz.
He was in The Biz.
Okay, interesting.
And Blythe Danner is her mom. Blythe Danner was an actress who did a ton of movies.
Okay.
And is still doing them. 2023 was her last movie.
I've never heard that name, Blythe Danner.
She's still alive. 82.
Good for her.
You've seen Blythe Danner movies.
Oh, I'm sure I have, and she's been in that many movies.
Yeah. Let's see. Meet the Parents? Any of the Meet the Parents movies? Have you seen any of those?
Yes, but I don't know who she plays in Meet the Parents. Like,
sure. To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. That movie's great.
I have not seen. That's Wesley Snipes movie, right?
Yep. A lot of 90s movies here.
Yeah.
All right, what's your number 2?
All right. My number 2, this might be my most controversial pick. I know you've disagreed with some of mine. Again, these are all movies that I like, that I think are good, not great. Maybe they're missing something.
Mm-hmm.
So my number 2 is 2007's The Mist.
I like that movie.
Yes. Okay. This movie stars Thomas Jane. This is based on a Stephen King, at least short story, if not novel. And this is about a group of people who are in I think it's a convenience store or a general store of some sort. They're in a store in the middle of nowhere. And then a mysterious mist surrounds the store. they can't really see out. They don't know what's out there. And then throughout their time in the store, these otherworldly creatures, we'll just say, are kind of attacking the store. They realize they can't leave because once they leave on the mist, they'll be picked off, and they have to also defend themselves for whatever is outside that is coming in. And this movie is sort of a, it's a like a bottle episode. It takes place more or less in this one location of this store, and different people are handling being confined, dealing with the monsters in different ways. The reason I put this movie on my list is I think the concept is super interesting. Like, what happens if you're trapped, you don't know, there's no connection to the outside world, and you're being assaulted by unknown creatures. I think the CG in this movie is kind of questionable at best at times. Like, do you remember the giant bumblebees is probably the best way to describe them, that are stinging people? They look bad.
Sure.
The farther away a creature is and the more tentacly it is, the better it looks in this movie. When they try and get like actual creatures interacting with the people, they don't look that great. And I think some of the acting is kind of cheesy in this movie too. There's a lot of people just going big because they're like, "Oh, I'm scared. I don't trust you, and who put you in charge?" kind of stuff going on there. This movie also has I'm gonna say a famous ending is probably the best way to describe it. I really don't want to spoil the ending whatsoever.
Okay.
But you remember the ending to this movie.
Yeah. It's
okay.
All right. It's I mean, it's true to the source material.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I'm not saying it's a bad ending. I'm just saying it's a very choice of an ending. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you say it without saying it? It doesn't matter. It has an ending that not a lot of people like.
Yes, I would say it's a controversial ending.
But not
it's an
like
ending. It's a choice.
But I don't think it's a unrealistic ending.
Correct.
It's just
right.
Some people like more light endings.
It's controversial because it's not a expected ending you would have at the end of this kind of story.
Sure.
Yeah,
I love the ending.
I mean, it's an ending. Let's put it that way.
Totally makes sense to me why it ends that way.
Right.
And I think people who don't like it because it doesn't give them the feeling they were looking for, didn't understand what movie they were watching.
Fair enough.
And like what author that story came from. It's a Stephen King novel, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, Stephen King. No, he's always so he's upbeat.
Oh yeah, so many happy endings to the end.
So many happy endings, all his stories.
Yeah,
yes,
for sure. And I think that the fact that some people are upset at the ending just shows just how great that movie is. I mean, it makes you want good things for those characters.
Well, it's also manipulative. It does involve a small child.
Sure, I guess.
Like, it's they know what they're doing with like pulling at. Look, I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we're giving things away. So, yeah,
it's been around.
It's true. So.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
What's your number one?
My number one. This is the most movie that you could waste a Saturday afternoon on. I'm curious if you watch this because I at one point wanted to talk about it on the podcast. This was definitely in the Kyle era of the podcast.
Sure.
But I don't think we ever did it. I don't think we did an episode on it. The Tomorrow War.
Oh, not my pick. The guy who wrote The Gorge wrote The Tomorrow War.
Totally makes sense.
It's the same author. Yep.
Totally.
Same
sense.
screenwriter. Yeah. I totally forgot about that movie. That movie exists at all.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So yeah, The Tomorrow War was released mid-pandemic. You're talking summer 2021, I think, something like that. And it was a very expensive movie. $200 million budget, which is insane for a streaming only movie. Stars Chris Pratt, Yvonne Strahovski, J.K. Simmons, Betty Gilpin, amongst others. Premise is it's the future, and the only way to win a war against some aliens is to go into the past and fight them.
Not quite.
Something like that.
They need to recruit. They don't have enough bodies in the future to fight the war.
That's what it is.
So they go back in time
to get people,
draft people, bring them to the future to fight the war. Exactly.
Right. And they're like,
Yes.
hey, if you don't do this, you're going to die anyway. So you might as well like try to help us save the earth.
Or like save your family's future or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do it for the kids.
And there's $200 million on screen for sure. The actors, I'm sure they got paid well, but like Chris Pratt's the only like big budget actor, I would say, in that list. Maybe J.K. Simmons. Everybody else, not saying they got paid scale, but I bet he got like 10 million for it and everybody else did not get that. So most of it's in the effects and all that kind of stuff. And it's all very adequate.
Yeah.
I would say nothing amazing, nothing even super memorable, but entertaining in the most sci-fi average kind of way. Like in the way you'd expect a modern big budget sci-fi production that only turns out to be average would be. For that, I couldn't help but put it on my list. Also, it's a movie produced by David S. Goyer, who produced a lot of middle of the road movies, I would say.
Yeah, that's a familiar name.
In the late 90s and 2000s. Yeah. David S. Goyer, if you look him up, he had his hands in a lot of genre stuff, good and bad, back in the day. He also, I think, had executive producing credit on Nolan's Batman series, only because he did other Batman stuff.
So he has
maybe
like
something
some
else.
Batman connections.
I don't remember. Anyway, The Tomorrow War. If you need to waste an afternoon, that movie will waste it for you.
All right. My number one is also a very fun way to waste an afternoon. This is also a pandemic movie straight to streaming. It might be the same year as Tomorrow War 2021. Stars some great streamer names like Frank Grillo and Mel Gibson, as well as Naomi Watts.
Okay.
This is Boss Level.
I have never heard of this.
You've never heard of this movie?
I don't think so.
So at work, we have this, sort of logic problem of like, let's say you were in Groundhog Day scenario and it's just you. And Batman is hunting you every day. And Batman will kill you. This is a Batman who'll kill you. How many days must you relive until you can effectively defeat Batman in this Groundhog Day scenario? And like we'll discuss that.
Okay.
That is this movie. Frank Grillo plays a former assassin who wakes up one day and is killed by other assassins and then wakes up again. And he keeps waking up the same day and has to keep fighting the same assassins over and over and over again to try and eventually figure out why he's stuck in this loop. So it's like a video game. He progressively gets to harder and harder assassins as he progresses throughout the day. And relieves the same day over and over again. And this movie explains why he's in a loop, and it's silly, and it involves Naomi Watts and Mel Gibson and stupid sci-fi stuff that does not matter. You don't watch this movie for the sci-fi. You watch it for kind of, remember what made Live, Die, Repeat, what Edge of Tomorrow fun was watching Tom Cruise like fighting the same battle over and over again. That is this movie essentially with like Jason Bourne, John Wick style fighting.
So is Frank Grillo the lead?
Yes, yeah, he is the Bill Murray in the Groundhog Day.
Sure.
Yep.
Interesting.
And he wakes up and starts killing people immediately.
I'm in because this is directed by Joe Carnahan.
Yeah, who did The Gray.
Right. Well, after The Gray, I decided The Gray is one of those movies that like,
Right.
after he directed The Gray, I was like, now I have to see everything he ever makes because he might make The Gray again. So I saw Stretch, which was his next movie. It was not good. And then I lost track of him. The next movie he made, Boss Level. I got to see
Worth
it.
a watch. Worth a watch.
I got to see it now.
Yeah.
Sounds fun. Then he made another one in 2021 called Cop Shop.
Oh, never heard of that one.
Starring Gerard Butler and Frank Grillo.
Oh, okay.
Neo,
I feel like
neo-noir, dark comedy action.
could we do a list of just Frank Grillo sci-fi movies?
I don't think I've seen enough of them.
Okay. I'm sure he's done a bunch of middle-of-the-road sci-fi.
Let's letterbox this. Let's see.
I'm looking right now. Okay. Minority Report is not middle of the road. Purge Election Year. Boss Level. Homefront. Cop Shop. Edge of Darkness looks bad. Wheelman. Werewolves. Pride and Glory. Black and Blue. Beyond Skyline.
I have seen 14
Okay.
Frank Grillo
movies. I mean, he also was in the MCU, so you're gonna like knock off 3 right there.
That helps. He was in Endgame, Civil War, and Winter Soldier. Minority Report, Zero Dark 30. Did you already say these?
No. I was reading off his cheesy sci-fi movies he was in.
Okay. Warrior, End of Watch was
Yep.
great. He was in The Gray briefly.
Yep.
But wow, The Sweetest Thing. I would have never guessed he was in that movie. Hitman's Bodyguard and Gangster Squad.
He's in Wolf Warrior 2, which I think is one of those like huge Chinese movies that's made billions of dollars.
Sure. Oh, he was in Pride and Glory, which I believe is a boxing movie. I
Okay.
don't remember. Oh, and Beyond Skyline, which I enjoyed that movie. That's a cheesy sci-fi movie.
Yeah. I bet you if you went through his filmography, you could probably find 10 cheesy sci-fi movies that he's been in.
Yeah. He's in the 2 Purge movies I haven't seen.
Okay.
I've seen the original Purge movie, and I've seen the Purge Year 1. Or something like that. The original Purge or whatever. And both of those are good, but I've heard the other 2 are not good.
Okay, I've been intrigued by the Purge, more the concept. I just didn't know if the execution was any good or not.
I mean, the first Purge movie is like a low budget movie. It is.
And it's Ethan Hawke, isn't it?
It's Ethan Hawke, but it's like Ethan Hawke barricading himself in a mansion and like a bunch of people trying to get into the mansion. So it's far more like a home invasion movie than it is a movie that's consistently commenting on, you know, the idea of a purge. You know what I mean? What it means.
Yeah.
Then when they went back and did the prequel, which was like the Purge Year 1,
yeah,
it's not mirroring, but whatever. The politics of why the Purge was created.
Mm-hmm.
And it's some kind of similar Trumpian type stuff, I would say.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Okay.
Where it's kind of like, hey, this is a crazy idea, but this is how we're going to do it. You know what I mean? We're going to have a purge and we're going to get rid of all of our opponents in one night legally.
Oh, so the idea of the purge was politically motivated the first time.
Yeah, because the people that are going to survive it are going to be witch people.
Yeah, right.
The wealthy people.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Interesting. Okay.
Yep. It's a good one. It's like watchable. I mean, I'm not going to stump for it or anything, but
you're not saying this is a 5-star movie, right?
Well, it was interesting to see like the original Purge is like, I don't know, 10, 20 years after the Purge starts.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they just jump you in on a movie where like everybody knows what the Purge is and like everybody knows the game type of thing. Whereas the first Purge is like, we're really going to kill each other.
Like this is what we're doing. Yeah.
Right. Like, what does this really mean? And like some people don't take it seriously until it's happening. And other people were like, this is my opportunity. and like
Mm-hmm.
stocked up on guns and like craziness. But anyway, I would say if you want to get into the Purge, watch the first one,
Okay.
then watch the prequel. And then I guess if you really want to watch the bad ones, watch those. But I've heard that the other two are like just standard horror movies.
I did just realize I don't care for the genre of people hunt people. So maybe
You probably won't like this then.
probably won't like The Purge the more I think about it. So
Sure. Cool. Well, I got one movie out of this that I'm going to watch.
okay, yeah. I don't think I got any from you, but that's okay.
I'm going to watch Boss Level. If I had to pick a movie, you don't have to watch one, but
Sure.
if I had to pick a movie that
Okay.
you should watch, maybe either The Black Hole, just because of the
Okay.
historical, like this is Disney trying to make Star Wars. What
Right,
what does
yeah.
that look like when a Disney tries to make Star Wars? Pre-buying Star Wars because they couldn't
Mhm.
make one. Either that or The Box.
I think I'm more interested in Black Hole, just as a piece of history.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, that was The Gorge and our top 10 quote trash unquote sci-fi movies, or I guess what we've renamed it over the course of doing the list, movies you can waste a Saturday afternoon with.
I like that. I think it's a better name for the list.
It's a better
yeah.
name. I'm keeping trash just for the clickbait, but other than that,
Of course. Yeah. It does not as catchy as movies that you can waste on a Saturday afternoon.
All right, exactly. Well, thank you for listening to this episode 668 of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership. Don't forget, there's a video version on YouTube. Go check it out. Subscribe there. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Leave us an Apple Podcast review or send us a listener email, heyguys@cinereelists.com. Links to do any of those things are in the description. Also, be on the lookout for a link to the Oscar pool. We'll be giving away prizes for the best Oscar pool guesser. Whatever that ends up being, we don't know exactly, but it'll be something. And also, don't forget to follow us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Cinereelists, or you can follow me on my personal Blue Sky or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You can find me on Letterboxd at PeterSKB.
We will be back next week, likely with Zach, to review Amelia Perez
Mm-hmm.
and possibly Captain America: Brave New World. I think Amelia Perez definitely happening, like
Right.
95% happening. Captain America: Brave New World, likely happening, but not as strong.
No guarantees.
Right. So look forward to that. We'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.